masking leads to burnout, basically. And so many of us aren't even discussing it. And masking is that, the duck that swims on the water and you see this even, swim and glide, but underneath, this is what's going on. That is what it feels like when you have ADHD, or I like to call it like wearing the girdle. When we were growing up, if you wanted to put on a nice dress, it was before Spanx, and, you would put that girdle on, it would suck it all in and it would look like you were shapely and you didn't have any of the cellulite. But then when you took the girdle off, you could breathe. And masking is, that perfectionist who is checking her notes 5 different times, who it knows she has an appointment coming up, so she can't sleep because she's anxious about making sure she's going to be on time for it. She tends to be a people pleaser. I know for me, a lot of times I will bend over backwards or go out of my way for somebody else because I have this deep need to be liked, even though it might not be convenient for me. But masking is, like I said, looking like you've got it all together. Perfect example for me. Just this past Thanksgiving, we were hosting everybody. I like to have clean countertops generally, but when I'm having people over, I want a nice, clean kitchen countertop. So I shoved things in the garage and I shoved things into the coat closet. And a couple weeks later, when I went into that coat closet, I found my fruit basket with all of the rotten fruit. So even though I am aware of my ADHD and I try to be very out about it so that we can destigmatize it and I can raise awareness, that doesn't mean that I still don't recognize when I'm trying to compensate or pretend to be somebody other than who I really am. And that's one of the big passions I have, is helping people with ADHD connect with other people with ADHD, because then you can kind of like take off that girdle and say, this is really who I am. I've got a great masking anecdote, something that I didn't even realize I was doing. But whenever I will go out and present or entertain, I will go out and I'll buy all the matching plates or whatever it is that I need. And I actually was sponsoring a breakfast. I'm in San Diego. I'm a certified senior advisor. And it was my responsibility to bring in the speaker, which I decided it should be on ADHD, and provide the food. Old me would have gone out and I would have bought the yogurt and the granola and the fruit and all of the stuff. And I realized, that was me trying to look like I had it all together. So I eliminated as much as I possibly could. And then I also decided that rather than going out and getting the paper plates that matched and all of that stuff, I had leftover happy 13th birthday from my stepdaughter who had a party recently. And I'm like, you know what? I don't have to always look like I have it all together. Sometimes my favorite thing is to do it on easy. And sometimes we make it more complicated than it needs to be. And so even in my own life, I'm like, okay, how can I make this easier? So another great example, I have a podcast, and technology is not something that I'm good at, but I love the content. I'm passionate about the work. And so I'm very open on my podcast, and I'll just say, I'm not going to edit it. You're going to hear my dog bark. You're going to hear, my life and what goes on. Because if I had to edit this podcast, you wouldn't be listening to it. One of my favorite, I can't remember the phrases that I like to repeat to myself is, perfect is the enemy of done. Perfect is the enemy of done. Let that sit in.